Okay, well, let's get going. This evening, I want to welcome back Karen Shan to discuss another very valuable topic in financial literacy with us. Allow me to introduce myself first. My name is Patty Smolin. I am the business reference librarian at the Schaumburg Township District Library. And tonight's program is Understanding FinTech, digital wallets, P2P money transfer apps, and neobanks. I'm just going to give a brief description that was on our site, and I wish I would have been able to recall this by memory, but I wasn't, so I have some cheat sheets here. Financial technology, fintech, is changing the way we handle our money. I love Karen's write-up on this. It's like the wild, wild west, and it's very true. Each app has a different set of services, requirements, and fees. Regulations and protections created for traditional banking services don't necessarily apply. So Karen Chan tonight will teach how these fintech tools work and what to look for before transferring money with Cash App, Venmo, or Zelle, depositing money with neobanks such as Chime. Is it Sofi? Am I pronouncing that right, Karen?
Sofi, I think.
Sofi? Okay. And T-Mobile Money are linking bank accounts and credit cards to digital wallets like Apple Pay and Google Pay. So I want to thank everyone for joining us here this evening, and most especially I want to thank Karen for joining us once again.
It's wonderful to be back. You know, Patty is one of the librarians that I've known for a long time, and so we precede the pandemic by far. And it's always it's easier to work with someone that you've worked with in person. So wonderful to be back with Schaumburg Library. I want to tell you guys just a little bit about how this program came about. But I guess actually first, let me tell you just a word about me. What we're doing tonight, personal finance education, is what I have been doing for more than 25 years. Somebody said to me last week, they said, so can we say 3 decades? And I was like, you can, but it makes me sound even older. But that entire time, the goal has been to provide unbiased financial education. I worked with University of Illinois for almost 20 years, and so I was well-trained in doing research-based, unbiased education. I am a certified financial planner, but I don't practice, meaning I don't take clients. I got that training so I could do a better job educating the public, like what we're doing tonight. And I do not now, nor have I ever sold any financial products or services. And so tonight, therefore, it's important for me to say that although I'm going to use a lot of names of commercial products tonight, they in no way constitutes an endorsement. But because of the topic for this evening, I think the only way to make it understandable and concrete is to name names, to give you examples of the different types of fintech products that we're talking about. So just to be clear, no endorsements, these are just examples. And I'm going to ask you to do something for me. I forgot to tell Patty I was going to ask you to do this. I would like you all to use your chat box and answer a question for me, just to get a sense of where you are individually with all of these kinds of things. Would you, if you don't mind, in the chat box, tell me how many of the things that you see here, the names you see in front of you, or other types of fintech applications, how many of them have you used? Is it 0? Is it 3? Is it 8? Just to give me an idea what your experience level is, whether it's Google, whether it's wallets, whether it's peer-to-peer transfer programs. Oh, great. A lot of you are answering. I really, really appreciate it. Okay, so far, most of you are saying some, and oh yes, if you haven't used any, I do appreciate seeing a 0 as well, just so that I know that's where some of you are. All right, I'll be honest, some of you have used more of these than I have. Great. All right. So that just gives me a sense of the level of experience you have. So some of you may know some things that I do not. Others of you, this is going to be quite new to, and hopefully you'll pick up some tips tonight. So let me start here by talking about the money management apps, peer-to-peer money transfer programs, and digital wallets. I'm going to talk about these together because, as my little Venn diagram here indicates, there's quite a bit of overlap here. Some apps that we mainly know as ways to transfer money to friends and family may also serve as a digital wallet, and some digital wallets that you use to have choices about what card you use to pay at the checkout also serve as a way to transfer money to individuals. And so let me just introduce you a little bit to some of the more commonly known peer-to-peer money transfer apps and digital wallets, and then we'll dive into exactly what these things are and how they work. And for them, I've tried to do these, well, I see one where I failed. In general, I've tried to list things in alphabetical order because, again, I'm not trying to imply any rankings here whatsoever. We have at least two relatively popular apps that are strictly tools for transferring money to other individuals, or sometimes to businesses. And so Zelle is probably the more popularly used of these two. Walmart to Walmart, though, is also strictly a money transfer app. Over on the right, we've got things that function strictly as digital wallets, meaning that they'll let you store forms of payment and choose which one to use. And here we've got Samsung Pay and Walmart Pay. But the ones you're probably most familiar with are the ones here in the middle that do both things. So Apple Pay, Cash App, Google Pay, PayPal, Venmo. And by the way, if you didn't know it, PayPal actually owns Venmo. So they're the same company, but they do operate somewhat different. So exactly what is P2P? As I said, it stands for peer-to-peer, or you might think of it as person-to-person money transfer, done either it's done online, either using an app or a website, most commonly using a mobile device, although you may do it on your computer as well. And you are paying someone from either a bank account, from a debit card, or a credit card without actually revealing the bank account, debit card, or credit card information. That's one of the things that the peer-to-peer apps let you do, is to not have to share the actual account information where the money is coming from. So how do you do it? You download the app. Now, in the case of Zelle, you normally don't download an app. It's the exception here. Most people use Zelle by logging into their bank account or their credit union account, and they access it through the bank or through the credit union. If your bank or credit union doesn't offer Zelle as a payment option, then you could download the app and use it that way. But in each case, whether it's Zelle or Venmo or whomever, you're going to link it to a card or a bank account where the money is going to be taken from, and then you send the money. To do that, you have to find the recipient. Typically, that's going to be used by searching for their mobile number or searching for their email address. If you don't find them searching that way, it may mean that they don't have an account set up with this peer-to-peer transfer program. Also, if you're searching by name, you notice I didn't actually say search by name, because let's face it, how many Joe Taylors are there out there, and do you know whether you have found the right one? Mobile numbers and email addresses are at least unique. You select the dollar amount and you click send. It's that quick and that simple, which is one of the reasons why it's also easy to make a mistake. Now, what if you're on the receiving end? You can also receive money with a peer-to-peer money transfer program. And so it's just the flip of what we just said. You will need to provide either your mobile number or your email address, whichever you use to set up your account. Give that to the sender so that they can select the dollar amount and send to you, or you can send a request to the person who owes you money for the exact dollar amount. Then all they have to do is basically click to agree, and it's done. The payment that you receive would be deposited either to your bank account or credit union account in the case of Zelle, or for most other apps, it's going to be deposited to your digital wallet balance, not going into your bank account or onto your credit card, but held by the app itself. Then you would be able to transfer your money to a card that you have linked to the account, to the digital wallet, or to your bank account. But we're going to talk a fair amount about fees, and transferring money from the actual app's balance or the digital wallet's balance to a bank account or to a credit card. Those are the times when you need to pay careful attention to whether there are fees that are going to be assessed on that transaction. That's how peer-to-peer money transfer apps work. What about a digital wallet? two fairly technical definitions that I found that I kind of like parts of both, from Investopedia and from NerdWallet. Investopedia says, well, it's a software-based system and it securely stores your payment information and passwords for numerous payment methods. That's the key word there, numerous payment methods and websites. NerdWallet is a little more user-focused. It says it's a contactless payment method. Contactless meaning you don't actually have to touch anything to make a payment with it, that stores your payment options, such as credit and debit cards, and allows you to conveniently use your smartphone or even a smartwatch to make a purchase. That's how NerdWallet defines it. So, you may have used a digital wallet without really thinking about it. You may recall that on the list of names I showed you, PayPal was one of those. If you've used PayPal to pay a business or an individual, you've actually used a digital wallet. You just maybe didn't know the terminology. Actually, I think PayPal as a company precedes the actual concept of a digital wallet. Well, I guess not the concept, but the label. PayPal, I think, was in use before we really started talking about digital wallets as a thing. So how do you set one of these up? Well, of course, you have to choose and install the app on your phone. Then you have to go through the process of linking your credit card, your debit card, your bank account, or as many of those as you want, so that you'll be able to choose on any given transaction. Do you want to use your debit card to make that? Do you want it to come directly from your bank account, bypassing the debit card? Do you want to charge it to a credit card? You're going to have all of those options. Now, one of the things that I found to be somewhat interesting is that if you're usually more of a cash person, you're going to run into some barriers in using these newfangled financial technology. The only digital wallet that I could find that allows for the actual loading of cash into your wallet so that you can spend the cash from the wallet is Cash App. And in order to load cash into Cash App, it requires a visit to a Walmart store or some other locations. This was a surprise to me because most of the movement in financial management changes over the years has been aimed at individuals who typically don't bank, therefore don't have bank credit cards often, or bank debit cards. They may have reloadable prepaid debit cards, but making it easier for someone who doesn't bank has been a trend in a lot of different financial areas over the last few years. And so I was anticipating that digital wallets were going to be trying to tap into that audience, and they were going to make it easy for someone to avoid using banks, and these are going to become bank substitutes. And so, to be honest, it was a bit of a little wake up to me, a little aha, that these are not ways of substituting for banks. They're generally just another way of using the accounts that you've already established through banks. So back to the process of setting up a digital wallet. You've linked your credit cards, maybe you've linked a debit card or two, a bank account or two or three, and then you have to make sure that on your phone, you've turned on what's known as near field communication. You know what it is, even though you don't know the name. You recognize this symbol, right? At checkouts and basically every store you go to now, you see this little symbol. You see those waves on an icon on the terminal at the checkout. You see them on your credit card and maybe on your debit card. It's telling you that these are all near field communication enabled. And so you're going to have to turn that on your phone in order to use the digital wallet the way it's intended, which is largely tap and pay if you're in a store. So in store, tap your phone to the payment terminal screen, similar to the way you might tap your card to the top of the screen to pay with the card that has those same wave symbols on it. Or in some cases, it may be that you use your phone to scan the QR code that is displayed on the payment terminal. This is, in this situation, It's the seller has actually generated a unique code that communicates who they are, who the seller is that should get the payment, and the exact dollar amount that you should be paying them. You scan the QR code, the app then sends a token to the seller that's going to be the authorization for the payment to be made. And the thing that's interesting here with the QR code, and to be honest, with the tapping of the phone, either way, I mentioned earlier with the peer-to-peer transfer that one of the advantages is that you're not giving somebody a bank account number, you're not giving someone your credit card number. The same thing is true here. When you tap your phone or you scan the QR code that's displayed on the terminal, in either case, although you may have chosen your credit card to make the payment, or you chose your bank account to make the payment, the seller never sees that account information. Instead, they use a process called tokenization, a long word that means instead of sending your account number, they send a token, a little piece of communication to the seller that says, we have verified, here's how, this is your token that entitles you to your payment, but they never see your account information. It increases the security to a certain degree of these. Now, another way that you could pay in store, and this was another kind of surprise to me. I thought the idea behind digital wallets was to reduce our need to have maybe so many cards, or at least reduce the need to have to carry so many cards all at once. Instead, many digital wallets offer you their own debit card, and they will encourage you to use it. They may give you points or little rewards for using their debit card. You will request it through the app and you use it like any other debit card. You can use it in a store. Instead of using the wallet, you can use the wallet's debit card, the physical card they gave you to make the purchase. And when you do that, it is going to draw the money from the balance in your app. It's not taking it from a credit card or another debit card. It's assuming that you have a balance in your wallet itself, and that's where you're going to draw the funds from. Like I said, although I had a general understanding of these things, when I started delving into it, there were certain things that just didn't turn out to be the way I expected. Maybe you're having some of the same thoughts as we go along here. So that's about paying in store. Well, if that's how we pay in store, we're not going to be tapping our phones to the computer screen, to make a purchase online. So how does that work? Well, a couple of ways. One way to pay online with the digital wallet is when you get to the checkout screen to look and see if the app's icon appears alongside the other standard payment options. We're used to seeing the symbols for Visa, MasterCard. We've all gotten very used to seeing PayPal as a checkout option on many online websites. You may now start to see some other ones, like you may see Google Pay, you might see Apple Pay offered. And if it is an icon that shows up at checkout, clearly that's how you access that wallet. The other way to make an online purchase with your digital wallet is that debit card that the digital wallet wants to give you. And again, that debit card is going to encourage you to actually hold a cash balance in the wallet itself, rather than in your bank account or on a debit card that you've linked to the digital wallet. So now that we kind of know how these things work, how on earth do I choose one of these apps? There are a lot of questions that you ideally would ask. I'm going to try to kind of prioritize these from the things you really have to know to the ones that would just be good to know. So the initial questions are, first, is the app going to work with my phone? Now, a lot of apps will work with any phone, but there are some major exceptions. Apple Pay only works on iPhones. If you've got an Android phone, sorry, Apple Pay is something you're not going to be using. Samsung Pay works only on not just Samsung devices, but select Samsung devices, and certainly not any Android device that's not a Samsung. So the first question is, what kind of phone do I have? And how does that limit the choices that I have? The second question here is to make your life easier. Instead of fighting an uphill battle trying to get all your friends and family to switch over to the thing that you happen to choose, you might want to ask around and say, What peer-to-peer money transfer do most of my friends and family use? If everybody's using Venmo, your life is going to be easier if you go that route. If most everybody is using Zelle, then easier to go that route. Maybe you'll end up using both, but it will be simpler if you don't have to clutter your life with additional payment options like that. And then the main decision is going to be, what accounts do I want to link? Not just so that you can make sure you're linking the accounts that you want to, but that you are allowed to link the type of accounts you want to use. For example, the last bullet here, I've mentioned Zelle, the peer-to-peer payment app that's largely used through your bank website or your bank's app. Zelle requires a bank account, and that is the only way that you're going to be able to transfer or receive money. It's going to go through that bank account. If you're using the Zelle app instead of using it through your bank or your credit card, in that case, you can use a debit card, but only one debit card. So you're not going to be able to link 3 or 4 different payment options and use them through Zelle. Zelle is not a digital wallet. Zelle is a peer-to-peer money transfer, purely that and that only. And they will only let you have one place that the money comes from or goes to. Now, on the other hand, if you're really working with a digital wallet, you are going to be able to link bank account, perhaps bank accounts, plural, certainly multiple credit cards, multiple debit cards. It appears that most of them will allow you to link to a prepaid debit card, if that's something that you use, or a government benefits card, if that's how you're receiving something like either unemployment benefits or other sorts of state or federal government benefits. You're probably going to be able to link any and all of those. But it's good to think about which things you do want to link so that you can verify that the app that you're considering will actually accept all of those and work with them. Now, the range of services that you can use is relatively large, and so it's good for you to think in advance about, what do you think you want to do with this? Is your main purpose to send or receive money with people in the US? Or is it mainly something you're going to be using for in-store purchases, but you want the convenience of the tap and go and being able to choose which payment option is going to be used? Is it mostly for online purchases? Then you might want to look and see, what digital wallets are you actually seeing offered at checkout on the websites that you use most often? Are you someone who is buying and selling online? That means you have a different level of need. Do you need to use cash? As I mentioned earlier, loading cash onto these wallets is not going to be easy. And even with the Walmart to Walmart money transfer app, you have to go to the store to load the cash. You could find some that will let you have a paycheck or other payments direct deposited onto the digital wallet. Cash App is one that really advertised that back when the economic impact payments were being made during the pandemic. They did a lot of advertising and solicited the opening of many new accounts with them, strictly for the purpose of being able to have those payments from the government deposited that way for you. If you have a need to make international money transfers, you're going to have to shop very carefully for the right app. Most digital apps, most digital wallets will only allow transfer to 1 or 2 foreign countries, and they differ from one wallet to the other. And if you're talking about receiving payments for a business, you probably need a business account, not just a regular personal account to start with, because you're going to need a different set of coverages than the personal accounts will offer. Fees are the next big thing to think about. And this is where we, in my opinion, we get into the wild, wild west. Not only because the fees that are charged vary, sometimes significantly from one app to the other, but because, first bullet here, there is no standard disclosure format for how they have to show you those fees. You're familiar, I expect, with when you apply for a credit card. I actually got lured into thinking about applying for a credit card online today when I was making a purchase with an airline. And I clicked to go and check on it. And of course, one of the things that they had to offer me was to view the standard form that tells me all of the interest rates, all of the fees that can apply. And when I saw the annual fee, I backed out and said, no, thank you. There is no standard disclosure form like that for any of the things we're talking about tonight. And not only do they not have a standard format that they're going to give you the fees in, you may have to really dig for that information. And to be honest, I found that the best sources that I could locate that told me about the fees of the various digital wallets or peer-to-peer transfer apps was not the apps and digital wallets themselves. It was third-party sources of information who had collected this data and were presenting it for the public. And I'll tell you right now that one of the main ones I found that gave good, complete information on this is NerdWallet. And at the end tonight, I'm going to give you the URL for my website. I collected the URLs of the most useful websites and web pages that I used to pull together the data that I used for this program. And I think you may find those helpful when you have learned what we are talking about tonight, and you're at the point of saying, okay, which one would be the best for me? There are numerous articles online that I think will help point you in the right direction, and you'll have enough background tonight to understand what they're saying to you. Second bullet about fees. Many apps are going to charge you either 2.9 or 3% for charging to your credit card. You don't normally see the fees that merchants pay when you use your credit card to buy something in a store or online. But every time you use your credit card, the credit card is collecting a fee from the merchant. Well, in the case of digital wallets here, the credit card isn't in a position to charge the merchant the fee because they're not communicating directly with the merchant, right? The digital wallet is. And so in this case, the digital wallet is going to have to pay the credit card a fee, and they're going to pass that fee along to you. They are not going to absorb that. In addition, your credit card may treat purchases made through your wallet as a cash advance. How are cash advances on credit cards different from regular purchases? There may be a fee right off the top for cash advance, and interest begins from day one. There is no paying off the balance on your credit card by the statement due date and paying no interest. No, for cash advances, interest starts from day one because it is considered a cash advance. They had to go ahead and front that money for you. Payments from a bank account or a debit card may be free, but you have to look app by app to know. For example, PayPal, in addition to charging for if they pull money, if they charge a purchase to your credit card, they also charge you 2.9% for using funds from your debit card. Not sure why. Debit card fees are not generally as high as credit card fees, but that's their policy. And the other thing that I've heard from people that they have gotten caught on is something called instant balance transfers. See, if you receive money into your digital wallet, or if you deposited cash onto your digital wallet, that means that the balance is held by the wallet, right? It's not held in your bank account. It's not used to pay off your credit card. You've got a balance on your digital wallet. Now, that balance is not insured on your wallet because it's not a bank. And you may just want to use the money anyway. So you want to transfer it to your bank or transfer it to your credit card. And maybe you're accustomed to immediate gratification. You want it to happen in real time. Like you want to click transfer and you want to know that the money's there, instantaneously. Well, instant balance transfers to a bank account or to a card are going to typically incur another fee, generally around 1.5%. Now, on the other hand, what they call standard transfers from your wallet balance to one of your linked accounts, standard transfers are often going to be free, but they will generally take 1 to 3 days. But like I said, this is something that varies from app to app, from wallet to wallet. For example, Google Pay will transfer to bank accounts in 1 to 3 days. Those are free. But if they transfer to a debit card, they're going to charge you 1.5%, while others may not charge you anything. So I have to point out at this point that Zelle has no fees. The payments are coming either from your bank account, if you're using the bank's app, or the payments are coming from a single debit card if you're using the Zelle app instead. And there are no fees, plain and simple. To be honest, I didn't fully believe that, and I kept poking around and kept looking. Zelle is unique in that it was not created by a single for-profit company and then marketed. It was created by a consortium, a large consortium of banks, as a tool that they were going to offer to their customers. And so now that doesn't mean that down the road, a profit motive might not arise here, and maybe Zelle would eventually become a little more multifaceted and fees might show up. But as of right now, if you're using Zelle, you can actually rest easy that there aren't any fees. But it's also not very flexible. You can only use it to do certain things from these very certain accounts. So what are some additional questions you might want to ask? If you're going to be a heavy user, or you anticipate using this for large money transfers, you need to check into what are the limits. How much can you send per transaction, per day, per week? The limits may be in the thousands, but don't assume. No, check what they are beforehand. It's just like if you ever got caught by having taken out as much cash as you were allowed from the ATM and you couldn't take any more. Know what the limits are up front so that you don't get caught like that. Find out how quickly transfers are going to happen because we've got quite a range here. Zelle, pretty much instantly. Google Pay, if you are paying from a bank account or putting money into a bank account, could take as long as 5 days. That's longer than most of us are accustomed to in today's world. And how do you get help if you have questions? Is there a customer service number? Don't count on it. And if you need help in another language, is that going to be available? And back to that concept of how you could have a balance on the wallet itself. How do you track that balance and track your transactions for that matter? And is there a cost for that access? Are there other benefits or services that are included? And are there fees attached? And how do you close the account? I will have to be honest with you. I saw that information not posted voluntarily anywhere. I don't know the answer to that question. How do you close the account? And if you do, is there a fee for that? Maybe if you've only had the account for a certain period of time or use the wallet for a limited period of time, is there going to be a fee when you try to close that down? Good questions to ask. And one of the reasons that we're talking about being careful in asking questions up front to figure out how these things work is because there is a lot of fraud and crime that takes place with these digital methods of managing our money. So let's learn how to use these apps safely. Maybe you're like me or like I used to be. I really didn't want to have to go through the hassle of typing in a code or using my fingerprint every time I wanted to do something on my phone. I really resisted that until one day I woke up and said, you teach about safety with this sort of thing. How can you not do the smart thing yourself? And so I gave in. And I will tell you that once you're accustomed to it, it's not that big of a deal, especially since you may be able to set it up so that when you're connected to your home Wi-Fi unit, you may not be prompted to enter any of those things. But please, please, please secure your phone with a PIN or with a fingerprint so that a stranger will not be able to easily hack into your phone. And choose an app that lets you set up a PIN within the app as well. Or even better, that it will let you set up two-factor authentication that has to be used before you can send a transaction. Again, a little bit of awkwardness here, but we're concerned about fraud that could be significant amounts of money in some cases. And so protection is important here. And some of the apps, Venmo in particular, was initially set up as a social thing where people could see maybe not how much you were sending or spending, but that they could see what your transactions were, who you were sending money to or where you were spending money. That is really setting you up to have your identity stolen, or at least to have someone impersonate you so that they might be able to approach your friends and con money out of them. So please, in the app, set the privacy options to the most secure. Don't let it share your transactions on social media, but do opt in to you getting notifications for every transaction, and then make sure that you actually read them. The only problem with getting notifications is at some point they can just become noise that we ignore. And so you're going to have to work at not letting it become noise and making sure that you are paying attention and reading those notifications. This was not something I expected to run across. This is kind of unique, apparently, to fintech. When you're looking for help, when you're looking for information about them, beware fake websites that will pretend to be help centers for apps, particularly for Cash App. There was a very successful fraud perpetrated by an organization who posted online help pages pretending to be the official help pages for Cash App. What did they ask for when you came to the page? Of course, you were supposed to enter your Cash App login and password. What were they able to do then? Hack your Cash App account, take any digital balances that you had there, maybe tap into the accounts that you had linked to it. It was a huge problem. And so be careful where you look for information, or more specifically, be careful where you use your login information. Make sure that you have gotten to that page through a route that you know is the legitimate digital wallets page or the peer-to-peer payment apps page. Now, back to that idea about keeping balances in the app itself as opposed to transferred out to your bank account. See, they put these fees in place so that you're going to perhaps think twice before you transfer money out to your to credit to your credit card or to deposit to your bank account, especially if you were thinking of doing it instantly, because those especially are often going to have fees. But there's also a risk in keeping balances in the app's account. It's not a bank. It is not insured by the FDIC or by the NCUA for credit unions. And so any money that you have that's stored with that app is at risk. It is only as safe as the financial well-being or the hacker prevention that app has in place. It's better to have your deposits transferred to a bank or to a credit card or to a debit card, and it's better to make payments from those accounts as well. Using them as the sources for your payments may give you better protection from fraud or misdirected payments, but there's no guarantee. Just yesterday, I read an article in the newest issue of Consumer Reports basically saying, if something goes wrong with a purchase or a money transfer with either a peer-to-peer money transfer app or with a digital wallet, you may be largely on your own to try to get that resolved. And so that's another place where the wild, wild west kind of shows up here, is that the consumer protections that we're accustomed to, if our credit card gets used fraudulently, or if I order something online and it never comes, I can dispute that with my credit card company. You don't have those kinds of protections working through the apps that we're talking about tonight. Now, I mentioned earlier that the beauty of peer-to-peer money transfer apps is that they're quick and easy, right? You can send money to someone, with a couple of clicks, a couple of taps, a couple of, just finding a phone number or an email address. But the problem here is, A, it's very easy for you to send it to the wrong person by mistake. And it's very easy to be conned into sending money to someone that you shouldn't have. Only use peer-to-peer money transfer apps to send money with people that you know and trust. That means family and close friends. It is not the person who contacted you on Facebook Marketplace about the thing you're selling for $20, and they don't want to have contact with you, but they'll send you payment through Zelle if you'll just leave it on the porch for them to pick up. You might come out okay on that. You might not. Maybe they hacked somebody's account. Maybe that payment is going to be invalidated. There's risk in using peer-to-peer money transfer apps with strangers. And before you send payment to a new person, it can be somebody you know, but before you send money to a new person, because if you by accident send it to the wrong person, your money may simply be gone. Be careful. The first transaction you should do is a simple $1 test transaction. I had a friend who bought tickets for me. There were a group of us going to an event together. She bought the tickets. I owed her the money. We decided to do this transfer like this, but her name is not terribly uncommon. I wanted to make sure that I was sending it to the right person. Which email address was she using? Which phone number was she using? So I sent her a $1 payment first. And once she said, yeah, Karen, I got it, then I sent her the remaining money because I knew that I was sending it correctly. But I verified first. I think this is perhaps more inconvenient than most of us would be willing to do. But one recommendation I saw was that if you're going to do, especially if you're going to do a fair amount of peer-to-peer money transfers or actively using a digital wallet with a bank account, they actually suggested that you consider having a dedicated bank account with a limited balance that you're going to use for those kinds of transactions. Why? Because if you do get hacked, if there is someone who starts making unauthorized transfers, you've only got a limited amount of money at risk because the balance in the account is low. It's kind of like the recommendation that has been given sometimes to people with children going off to college, or maybe they're still in high school and you want them to learn how to use something like a debit card or what have you. And sometimes the recommendation has been, well, give them a debit card, but have it connected to a bank account that you opened up just for this purpose, and you only have X number of dollars in it each month, so that if the kid goes crazy, doesn't know how to manage the money, eventually they're not going to be able to spend anymore because they have depleted the balance in that little account, rather than the probably much larger balance that you keep in your main checking account. So I've alluded to this, but let's talk a little bit more specifically right now about peer-to-peer money transfer and fraud. Fraudsters have actively attacked this mechanism to run scams. And one example is the Grandparent Scam that you probably have heard about otherwise. It's where, grandma or grandpa gets a phone call. There's some child that sounds mildly hysterical on the other end saying, "Grandma, grandma." And grandma says, "Oh, Harold, is that you?" "Yeah, grandma, it's me. I was on spring break and I got arrested, and you can't tell mom and dad about this, but I need $500 to get out of here so I can get home and get back to school on time." Some emergency situation. And the kid says, "Grandma, I'm going to hand the phone to the police officer. They can tell you how to wire the money over here so I can get out tonight." Well, grandma's terrified. She does it. And of course, it wasn't Harold. She's the one who came up with the name Harold. And the kid and the person on the other end just played into it. They are now asking you to send this money using a peer-to-peer money transfer app. Instead of previously, they were asking you to go buy gift cards or other ways of giving the money that would be untraceable or irretrievable once you had sent it to them, or given them the codes off of the cards that you bought. Now they're saying, use your money transfer app and send the money this way. Well, yes, you were a victim of fraud, but the transaction was authorized by you. You made the transaction. And so banks typically are saying, or whoever is behind the peer-to-peer money transfer apps are saying, sorry, yeah, you were defrauded, but you made there was a transaction that you authorized. You did it. We're not responsible. And so that's one of the reasons that fraudsters have picked up on this as a way of committing frauds and being assured of getting away with the money. If you, this is why you don't want to have transactions that you're making through one of these apps posted on social media, because it makes it easier for someone to know how you behave, where you shop, when you shop, easier for them to impersonate you and then to scam money from your friends. And that's another fairly common scam that's done. Now, on the other end of things, let's say that you're actually selling an item and you're using these apps to get payment. If the payment was fraudulent, somebody did hack into account, well, that person you thought paid you and has come and picked up your $100 bicycle and it's gone. Well, your bike's gone. And if the transaction really was fraudulent, it was done by a hacker, you may be out the $100 as well. One way to perhaps protect yourself is to use a credit card to back up those peer-to-peer payments. May give you better protection, but the payment, the fee for that is often going to be about a 3% fee each and every time. Just remember, every app is different. For example, Google Pay, Apple Pay, and Zelle won't let you use a credit card for peer-to-peer money transfer. They also don't charge a fee for peer-to-peer money transfer. So it kind of goes hand in hand. No fee, but you also can't use a credit card that might give you better protections. Different apps may give you different options for how to identify the people that you're going to do business with, that you're going to send money to. Sometimes the app may assign each user a unique QR code. And by scanning that QR code on the other person's phone or what have you, that may be a way that you could transfer funds. Google Pay and Venmo do that. Or maybe they have a handle or a tag that they are assigned or chose within the app. And you can transfer money by looking for that Venmo handle or that cash tag in Cash App. I've already mentioned some of the unique things about Walmart to Walmart that if you want to send cash, well, I mentioned about depositing cash in the Walmart to Walmart app in order to send it, but the person you're sending the money to is going to have to go to their local Walmart store to pick it up. And so to me, this doesn't quite fit the definition of why most of us are using peer-to-peer money transfers. We want this to be easy and seamless and not take up any additional time. And so I don't think Walmart to Walmart quite rises to that standard. As I mentioned earlier, the ability to send money to other countries depends on the individual app. The countries that are allowed vary by app, and there will very likely be additional fees in addition to having to exchange funds and so forth. Now, the other thing that I think is even more odd is that some of these apps that mostly seem like they're catering to people who are kind of avoiding banks. On the other hand, they're going to offer you the opportunity to set up an investment account or to buy digital currencies like Bitcoin within the app. I personally don't think that those services are needed to be offered in this way. They seem to me kind of incompatible. The way that I would choose a brokerage firm to do my investments, or if I was going to invest in digital currency, I'm not sure that I would be doing it through the same app where I'm moving money around between accounts. Just my personal opinion on that one. All right. So let's talk about the third and final category of things, which is probably the one that you know the least about. This is the one that I had no personal knowledge of until I accidentally found that I was working with a neobank. Before we talk about what is a neobank, let's start out with what is a bank. We all think we know, but do you really? A bank is a financial institution with a license, also known as a charter, to hold and lend money. In other words, they have to legally be authorized to do what they do. There are state charters and there are national charters. Credit unions also have to have charters. A bank must have this authorization before they can function, before they can take deposits into their accounts, and before they can make loans. It's highly regulated. The Federal Reserve is one of their regulators. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency is one of their regulators. The FDIC, who provides the insurance on the accounts, is one of their regulators. And because of that, we have protections like bank accounts are insured by the FDIC, Credit union accounts are insured by the NCUA, meaning that if the bank failed or the credit union failed, you would be made whole up to a dollar amount of at least $250,000. Now, a bank isn't necessarily brick and mortar. You can have brick and mortar banks. You can have online only banks. You can have banks that do both. And again, I'm using examples here just to help you grasp what we're talking about. Here are some examples of online only banks. Very well known, some of them, but they're online only. Synchrony is well known for offering savings accounts and CDs, but they also are the bank behind a lot of retailer credit cards. For example, I think Lowe's Home Improvement, their credit cards are actually through Synchrony Bank. You might have a credit card in your wallet that's through Synchrony Bank. Ally is another online bank that has been around for a number of years, best known for its checking and savings accounts and CDs, but they also do different forms of loans. You're familiar with Discover Card as in Discover Credit Card, but there's also the Discover Bank that offers savings, CDs, and so forth. So these are banks that you will not see a sign hanging on the corner for. They are online only. They're still banks. So what is a neobank? A neobank isn't a bank. It's a tech company that provides online only banking services through an app or perhaps through a website. They're at this point typically limited to checking and savings accounts. The appeal, the reason you'll notice them is that they're typically offering higher interest rates than traditional banks. They may be offering lower account fees, and they may advertise special perks like get your paycheck 2 days early. Have you seen some of those ads? But here's where the bank part comes in. In general, they partner with an established bank, and that's where the accounts are actually held. They're partnering with a chartered or licensed state or national bank, and your money is actually held there. So the neobank, the tech company, is really more of a go-between. They're providing the technology to make this happen, but they don't actually hold the money. That's why probably your neobank account will end up being insured, but it's not insured because it's in the tech company's name. It's insured because it's held by an actual bank that they are partnering with. And if you find a neobank who doesn't partner with a real bank, those accounts would not be insured. Again, let's look at some examples here so that you might start to recognize who some of these people are. The largest group are going to be neobanks that do partner with chartered banks so that your accounts would be insured. Chime is one I already mentioned, that they're the ones who actively solicited for people to open accounts to have their economic impact payments deposited into. Wise is one that's fairly well known. Lily, and one that you won't see on a lot of lists, but the one that I happen to encounter is T-Mobile Money. Yes, T-Mobile as in mobile cell phone accounts. They have another aspect to them as a fintech company, which is T-Mobile Money. There are one and maybe now two neobanks that started just as fintech companies partnering with other banks, but now they have actually become chartered banks. Vero has already made that transition. Sofi is probably either there or almost there. They started working on this back in the fall of 2021. And I was also able to find one example of a neobank that does not partner with a chartered bank and therefore whose accounts, I say may not here, do not have FDIC insurance. The one example I could have is called BlockFi. The other thing that's unique about them is that they aren't dealing in dollars. They're dealing in cryptocurrency. And so that's one reason why they probably aren't partnering with a chartered bank. Chartered banks are not dealing in cryptocurrency at this point. So if you're looking at setting up an account with a neobank, what should you be thinking about? Some of this is the same as if you're using a peer-to-peer money transfer app or a digital wallet. You're mostly going to be doing all of these transactions via your phone, so please secure your phone. PIN, fingerprint, your choice, but secure your phone. Choose the company you're going to work with and then install its app on your phone. Read all the information you see on the neobanks website and on the App Store. Make sure that you've seen everything they have to tell you. And in addition, do a search online using the name of the company and the word reviews or complaints. It's a very good way to see what people are saying out there who already have experience with. And if you see the same type of complaint showing up time after time, that may be a red flag. It's not a company you want to work with. When you set up your account, please choose a difficult password. Difficult means long, and it means either nonsensical or not something that's real words. Also a combination of uppercase, lowercase numbers, and at least one symbol if that's allowed, by the password. Each company that sets up login criteria decides how many characters are they going to require, and how many of those categories of characters will they allow. Maybe some aren't yet accepting the special characters, but for sure, use a mix of everything that is allowed. And then, just like with the other apps we talked about, for the app itself, set up a PIN or two-factor authentication to make it more difficult for anybody to hack the account. Follow the instructions to open your account. It's going to be very similar to opening a bank account anywhere else. You're going to have to provide a fair amount of information, probably including your social security number, your address, and so forth. You may discover that joint accounts are not available. That requires a little extra layer where they have to verify that second person. And so fintech companies just may not be wanting to mess with that at this point. So don't be surprised if they only allow individual accounts. Then you'll need to deposit your money. And of course, all these transactions are going to be digital. So one option would be to fund the new account by transferring funds from an existing bank account that you have, or by writing a check on an existing account that you have, and then taking a picture of the check using the mobile app to make the deposit. Those are the two usual ways of funding these accounts. And some of the things you'll want to ask if you ever use an ATM, and even if you're not a frequent user, you're dealing with something that is digital only here. You want to know what your options are for accessing the money in the account. So one question is, which ATMs can I use without a fee? And if I do have to use an ATM that does charge a fee, will the neobank reimburse me for those? Online only banks are more apt to do that. I really don't think very many neobanks are, but you want to check. And then how do you make deposits? And is there a daily limit? This isn't something that I would normally have thought to ask about. But in my one and only experience so far with neobanks, I discovered that from within the neobanks app, I could only set up a transfer for a certain dollar amount per day, a relatively low dollar amount. And the only way I could get the amount of money into the account that I had intended to transfer immediately was to set up repetitive day after day transfers of this smaller amount. It was aggravating. It was also difficult to track to make sure that everything was, that each and everything had shown up. In hindsight, I wish I'd made each transaction for a slightly different dollar amount. Then I could have matched them up a lot easier. The workaround for that can be to set the transfers up by going to your main account, where maybe you have the cash that you're trying to move to get the higher interest rate on. Initiate the transfer from your main account and send it to the new one. You may avoid those daily limits that day. And then if you need to deposit cash, how do you do it? And kind of like I was talking about with the digital wallets, you might be told to take the cash to a participating merchant, and Walmart tends to show up on these lists. But this is kind of quirky. The one example I saw said, yeah, take your cash to Walmart, but you ask Walmart to load it onto your debit card. You pay a fee to Walmart to do that, and then you got to get the money from the debit card over to your new bank account. So again, you want to find out not only how to deposit money, but how to withdraw it. And is there a daily limit on how much you can withdraw? Find out whether there will be a debit card attached to the account. The odds are yes. Can the account be overdrawn? And is there a fee? Is there a particularly nice advertised interest rate? That's what got you interested. Make sure you understand the criteria about getting that interest rate. It could be that that great interest rate only applies to the first X number of dollars in the account, and any balance over that gets a much lower interest rate. Or in the case of the T-Mobile Money account, they advertise a 4% interest rate, but that only applies to people that have T-Mobile phone accounts. And if you don't, then your interest rate is significantly less. Is there a customer service number where I can get hold of someone? And if I do need to close the account, how can I do it? I'm going to tell you one more thing about my personal experience. I knew that when I opened my account with the neobank, I knew that I saw that it was FDIC insured. So I felt okay about it. I opened the account using the browser on my computer, and I hadn't actually downloaded an app. I do a little bit of banking on my phone, but it's not the main way that I do it. Well, maybe 3 or 4 weeks in, one day I went to log into the account on my laptop and the website wasn't working. And the next day, it still wasn't working. And 4 days later, it's still not working. And I am freaking out at this point. It's like, I have money on account here. I can't even verify that it's there. I can't see anything. I was really getting alarmed. And I'm not sure how I stumbled across this. Maybe it's while I was working on this program last fall initially. I ran across something that suggested that they are really set up to be accessed through their mobile apps and not so much through their websites. Sure enough, logged into the app on my phone, no problem. I can see everything I need to see, verify everything I need to verify, but at least the last time I tried, the website was still not working. That was something I did not anticipate. So, but remember, we're talking about upstart companies here. We're talking about financial technology, really catering toward people who are doing everything, on their smartphones and definitely doing everything digitally. So expect to do everything digitally with these accounts, very much like you would with any online only bank. Anticipate limited customer service. Even if the website is working, you may not be able to do everything on the website that you can do through the mobile app. The mobile apps are generally recommended. And as I said, if there are limits on how much you can deposit at one time or how much you can withdraw, a workaround for that may be initiating the transfer, whichever direction it's going, from the other bank where you're either trying to move the money from or redeposit the money back to. I mentioned previously that Chime actively advertised for people to open accounts specifically to deposit their economic impact payments there. That was all fine. But Chime got a lot of bad press when, after doing that aggressive marketing, they closed or froze many of those newly opened accounts, presumably because they were concerned that the payments were fraudulent, that there was some sort of a problem with them. And so people who had opened the account specifically to deposit either those economic impact payments or unemployment benefits, which they apparently had also marketed for, suddenly these individuals couldn't access the money at all. Kiplinger reported on this, other news sources reported on it. Maybe that's something that we won't see again, but it really gave a black eye to this relatively new neobank. Maybe going forward, there won't be those kinds of problems, but it left a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of people. And then I already talked with you about the T-Mobile experience that I had. So those are just cautionary stories for you to pay attention. And the last thing I want to tell you is, because I know the question that you have perhaps at this point is, how do I choose the best digital wallet for me? How do I choose the best money transfer app for me? Everybody's situation is different. each of the digital wallets, each of the neobanks, each of the peer-to-peer money transfer apps have pluses and minuses. They have things they do better. They have fees that are better or worse on certain things than others. And so, as I mentioned earlier, what I've done is on my website, KarenChanFinancialEd.com, go to the resources tab and then click on fintech, or just type in this whole URL. And you'll find links directly to the best resources I found who were comparing either several digital wallets or comparing peer-to-peer money transfer apps, rating them on different features, and in many cases saying, if you're this kind of user, this would be the one or two you should look at. If you're looking mainly to do this, this is the one you should look at. So I encourage you to make use of the links that I've posted there for you so that you can not only find the thing that is going to work best for you, but also that you'll understand, because most of these reviews are also going to talk about what are the fees that are charged, what are the limitations, what are the benefits of each individual one. And that information is easier to find in third-party reviews like this than it is from the app itself. Now, we used the chat earlier for you to give me some feedback. We're going to use it again at this point. What questions do you have that we didn't answer tonight? Are there some additional things that you would like to talk about? Please use chat, or actually I guess you've got one that's shown up in Q&A. Patty, maybe you'd rather than use Q&A, whatever you like.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's however they come into us. We have one question in the chat. Are there any benefits to use the debit card offered through the app? And I think you addressed that, but this person had asked it earlier on in the session.
I think that the main advantage is that it's a way of using the digital wallet if you're in a situation where you really can't tap your phone to a terminal or scan a QR code, you know, for online payments, I think is the main place where unless your digital wallet happens to be one of the checkout options offered, you're not going to be able to use your wallet there. You'll have to actually use the credit card and enter the number directly and that sort of thing. So I think that's what the debit cards do that is advantageous, is they make the wallet more functional in more situations. The problem I have with the debit cards is that it does kind of force you to carry a balance in the wallet where according to all the authorities I read, your money is much less secure than it would be basically anywhere else.
And we do have one in Q&A that says that this individual had said early on in the session they only use the peer-to-peer on their laptop because they're afraid to use it on their iPhone. I
understand that feeling. I do think that right now, okay, how can I say this? If you're using appropriate precautions on your phone, meaning that your phone is secured with either a PIN or a fingerprint, and that you have a login set up where you have to log into the app or enter a PIN in order to make a transaction, I would say that the security in those two situations is relatively similar. Nothing is 100% foolproof, but I don't think that we have seen more scams through mobile apps than we have through logging into web pages on our computers. At least I have not seen any data to support that. So I understand the concern. Make sure that you, on your computer, make sure that you have antivirus software installed. Make sure you keep it up to date, and make sure every time you're alerted that Windows or your browser or whatever has updates that you install them immediately, or have them set up to install without your approval. Because if you don't do those things, your laptop is vulnerable as well.
I don't see, let me see if there's any other questions coming out. I did make mention of Consumer Reports has a new article that was recently published called The Truth About Those Peer-to-Peer Payment Apps. And it just came out in the last few weeks. If we are your home library, you have remote access to Consumer Reports. If we're not your home library, you're welcome to pay us a visit and take a look at what we have on the shelves, or get in touch with your home library to see if you have remote access And either way, we will be able to provide that article to you. I'm going to add my email down here as well. If I can type correctly, then I will give it to you. But like Karen said, a lot of reviews, and I think Consumer Reports is a credible source to take a look at those reviews, at the various apps that were tested, and any updated information. I would go to Consumer Reports. That would be one of my go-tos, one of my handful of go-tos.
Yes, and just a comment about that particular article. One of the things I appreciated about it was they were just very clear about the fact that you may not have protections when you're using these apps. That was refreshing because a couple of months ago, I think it was January, Money Magazine had an excellent article about this topic. But in the article, at least in the print magazine for January, they talked about how you had protections that worked this way and that way. And I was puzzled when I read it. And I don't always read the corrections in the next issue, but I happened to read the corrections in February, and they were saying, oh, you know what, we got that wrong. And so here's what it should have said. And I have to say, it was still like reading muddy water. I had no clue what they were trying to tell me about protections. And so that's what I appreciated most about the Consumer Reports article, was that they basically said, don't count on your bank stepping up to help you. You know, if money came out of your bank account because you use a peer-to-peer payment app and you sent it to the wrong place, or because you were defrauded, probably not going to get assistance there.
Disappointing, but it helps to keep it real with our expectations. Patron has commented, Karen, I thought Money Magazine stopped print publications altogether.
Did I say it backwards? Give me a second, because to be honest, I was thinking, this is my one. Trying to find my fintech folder here. I guess if it, then is it Kiplinger's? Here we go. No, it's not it. Kiplinger's, my apology. You're right, not money, Kiplinger's.
Well, I think I'm going to leave this open for another moment to see if anyone has any other questions or comments that they would like to share.
And if anybody wants to, if you have a comment about an experience you've had, or something that I said tonight that your experience was different. Yeah, again, because this is such a new area where information is relatively hard to come by, because the fintech companies just don't put a lot of things out there the way I would like to them to declare everything so clearly. I would be happy for anybody to share information that you would like with the other participants or with me tonight.
Well, we're just getting a lot of very nice, appreciative comments, which I completely agree with. It was an excellent presentation.
I appreciate the feedback.
All right, well, Karen, I want to say thank you again for bringing this topic to us. You've been bringing us on target topics through the last 8 years that I know that I've been at this library, and the 5 years that I was at Mount Prospect. And I hope that you're able to always accept our invitations when we extend them to you. I know that we'd like to welcome you back based on your calendar and dance card at some point in the fall. And I know you'll, if you are able to do it, I know you're going to bring us something very relevant and on point. Karen, you are awesome. I'm not saying, I mean, I could totally poach this comment, but Karen, you are awesome. Thanks again for another great program. You are so honest and helpful. Thanks again. Absolutely. I agree with this audience.
Makes me feel so good. Thank you.
All right, everyone. I want to say thank you very much for your time as well. And if there's any other questions or sources that you would like demos on from the library's perspective, you have my email address. I can give you a hand with that, either in person or remotely, or any of my colleagues could as well. But Karen, I hope you have a lovely spring, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.